I'm originally from England, trained as a painter there, and I came here to the US originally to teach art and fell in love with the Bay Area, wanted to come back. I came back and did a lot of design work that was kind of related to concrete and construction, and that's kind of fed into my artwork in a big way. And the local train is going to go by now. And yeah, I've always been a kind of obsessive maker of things, and working with construction really kind of played off that. And a lot of the materials I work with now stem from that. Kind of have this dialogue between making images as a painter and making objects, and the lines get a little blurred. I sort of incorporate found objects sometimes into the paintings, areas of kind of reclaimed wood that I'll maybe even kind of carve into pieces of metal. Those kind of find their way into paintings, so the paintings start to become kind of like objects themselves, which kind of speaks to the subject matter, and I like the blurring of those boundaries. One of the ways I kind of approach my work is I always work on multiple paintings at one time, and I'll have an idea of what I want the whole collection of those to speak to, but I won't have a plan for each individual piece. What I'll tend to have is lots of little collections of images and lots of little fragments and lots of lists as well, lots of just verbal lists of either intentions of what I want the work to look like, what I want the work to say, or things that I might use in them. And I kind of pull from that pool of things, and I kind of just layer images and see what emerges, really, and then just start editing and emphasizing things and adjusting things. And my current work is sort of looping back to some earlier work and pulling out certain images that I've used before, but sometimes just combining them and juxtaposing them in different ways so that they suggest different things. This recent set of work, given that it's about the landscape and people's attitudes and values of the landscape, I kind of was listening to the song, the Woody Guthrie song, "This Land Is Your Land," and I realized the whole kind of tone of that song was just the tone I was going for with the painting. So I actually ended up covering the panels with the lyrics of the song. Which is a kind of a strange thing to do. I often will put some kind of random marks down just to get the painting started, so I'm not faced with a blank canvas. But with this, it was kind of interesting, because in some of the finished pieces you see big chunks of the lyrics. Sometimes you see barely anything at all. A lot of it has disappeared, but I kind of think it was good for me to do, because it's while I'm painting, it's kind of a reminder of what my intent is. The paints that I use are actually, it's kind of basically I make my own paint, which is acrylic based. I start off with like a liquid acrylic, and I add this sort of sand and cement mix to it, which is actually a compound that you would use for resurfacing industrial floors, which kind of sounds bizarre, but basically it just makes a very sandable paint. And I use all kinds of pigments, dry pigments, liquid pigments, sometimes some acrylic paint with it. And the result is a sort of a liquid paint that I can then sand later on. It really kind of works with the sort of landscape themed work that I'm doing, because it kind of has this very chalky material quality to it. The motivation for me to keep working on this stuff is there's lots of dimensions to it. First of all, I'm a compulsive maker of things. I've always done that, and I just like making objects, experimenting with materials, and I love the making of visual images. So when I'm in the studio, I'm often thinking about the very abstract qualities, the colors, the mark making, the composition, and those visual things. That's really what tends to occupy my mind while I'm actually making the pieces. I tend to have sort of worked out this vague, sort of rather nebulous intent in the first place. When I'm making them, I'm kind of absorbed in the visual, and then I'll have to step back to them and maybe look at a whole group of pieces that I'm working on, and to know if that kind of intent is getting across or not. And whether that's important or not is kind of debatable, because ultimately if I'm getting excited about thinking the thing through and about the visual aspects of it and the way the images are kind of talking to each other, if it's going to be interesting to me, I'm hoping that it's interesting to a viewer as well. I think that's okay to put it out in the world in that state. With the train again.